The church looks peaceful, and the sisters are on their knees, saying prayers to God Takafumi, the protector of the world. The sisters might appear pure and pious, but even Satan would worship God to escape them. And it doesn't take them long to show their true colors when a goblin visits the church to demand salvation. The poor goblin gets attacked by Sister Med, who embarrasses him to the other two sisters. They are traumatized by the sight, and Priest Scott, who has just been sent to the local church, is questioning his sanity. It is his first day there, and this sends him into a state of disbelief. Scott makes his presence known, and the goblin is almost begging him for help. When the sisters turn around to face the priest, they start lying and act like they are the ones who got attacked. Sister Med acted a little too strange because she had been drinking. A lot. Yes, as a sister at a church. Scott looks a little disturbed. Sister Calm apologizes for traumatizing him and asks what he's doing there. Scott tells her that he's been appointed as a new priest who will be living with them. Callum's thoughts are going astray, and she's worried about living with a man in a congested place. Sister Blumera tells her to relax, saying Scott must be a weirdo and won't attack them. Scott is very nervous around these strange sisters, and what Med does next makes him want to leave. Med pulls out another bottle and starts drinking, saying how the church merely exists for sinners like them to dump on. Med is drunk talking, and Scott rechecks his appointment letters, questioning if he was really sent to this hellhole. But there's no escape for him anymore, and he really has to live with these odd women. Scott looks pissed and curses out at one point too, which drives the sisters to emotionally manipulate him into staying there. And yes, it ends up working. Scott apologizes for being rude and promises the sisters that he won't inquire about their pasts. The night falls and Scott wants to sleep with good hopes, but the sisters break into his room to shatter them. They try to strip the priest and say very unholy things that make his rod extend into a large log. Being excited was a sin, and Scott is a sinner. So now, he'll repent for it by living with 3 frustrated monsters. It's been a week at Karma Church for Scott, and he wakes up to the sisters being desperate. It is time for his 7th prayer, but there are no believers to join these sinners in the church. Calm tells Scott that the church barely gets any donations, and people don't visit it either. The priest tells the sisters to get ready because they'll be visiting the village and greeting the people there. Calm, though, is busy with erotic novels and doesn't want to be disturbed. Scott finally makes it to Karma Village with the sisters, and he greets some women on the way. They were nice to him until they spotted the sisters and went truly nuts. The women almost killed them and they had to hide. Scott wonders what the Holy Sisters did to make the village hate them so much. The hiding spot wasn't too safe, and the villagers would have found them, so Blumera decided to enact Calm's erotic novel with Scott to drive the women away. It worked. Calm apologizes to the priest and tells him about their past experiences with the villagers. The sisters had visited Karma before to preach Takafumi, but never got any good response. They asked the people to donate to the church in return for a fortune pot, but only one person contributed. Then, the villagers threw a welcome party for the sisters, and Calm somehow ended up getting involved with some men, which enraged the village women. Now, the entire village hates the sisters, and they're still looking for them. Med suggested they should go back, but Scott didn't listen. He went to talk to the villagers, and came back with his clothes ripped off of his body. The sisters were hiding in the bushes, while the priest got his body rocked by sticks. They felt very bad for him, and just when he gave up, the sisters brought a bunch of human and inhuman kids and grandmas to partake in worship. Even though these people won't be of much help, Scott is still thankful to the sisters. Blumera steals the credit, and Scott praises her too, which makes her blush. The prayer finally starts, and the kids are impatient for the candy the sisters promised them. Meanwhile, Blumera is still stuck on the praises she got from Scott and wants to have an adult relationship with him. Then we delve into Blumera's lore, and in the past, a young priest was kicked out of a church because Blumera bragged about having an adult relationship with him. In the present, Scott is preaching Takafumiism to the kids, and they seem very interested, which makes him very happy. He thought he was finally making a difference, but the kids left him for the cookies the sisters brought, after calling him a boring yapper. Scott sighs, and Blumera brings some cookies for him to eat. She also kisses the packet to fill it with love, which weirds Scott out. Little did he know, Blumera had a whole talk with other sisters about how madly in love with him she was. Calm tried to talk her out of it, but got exposed by Med for having an inappropriate toy instead. That night, Blumera had decided to use her motherly charms to prevent Scott from going insane for her. By motherly charm, she meant giving Scott milk in a baby feeder and offering to share cookies mouth to mouth the next day. Scott finds her to be a weird menace and learns from Med that she's in love with him. He knows how crazy Blumera is about becoming an adult, so he tries to teach her how romance doesn't make one a grown-up and tells her how it is used to play with people's emotions. Blumera goes quiet, and Med and Calm are impressed by Scott's interpretation skills. They also talk about how Blumera tries too hard to become an adult when they themselves have done things nastier than her. Scott tells them to stop judging Blumera and watch her grow up well instead. They agree. Scott then spots Yu, the unicorn that visited Blumera last night, and finds it odd. The sisters tell him not to worry about it, and so they head back. Blumera is busy asking for forgiveness from her god for falling in love with the priest, and takes a seat on top of Scott. She leaves his room after kissing him. Med used to be a sober person, but then a festival in a village happened. She drank too much and kissed all the sisters of her church. Right now, she's sober and asking Scott to forgive her for accidentally sleeping in his bed fully naked. Calm's tea had sobered up Med, and Scott was surprised. The priest clarified that he did nothing with Med last night when Calm raised some suspicions. Blumera stained him again by mentioning that he's having a kid with her. Before Calm could confront Scott again, Med started crying, begging the priest to forgive her. Scott was speechless and decided to use Mio's sincerity for church's betterment. He tells Med that the god will forgive her if she quits drinking, and Med listens. Scott wasn't really convinced, though. Med was storing alcohol everywhere, so Scott had to keep an eye on her. Scott and the sisters went farming, and the priest hoped there wouldn't be any alcohol hidden in the crops. But sadly, there was, and Calm had thrown it out. Med still had other ways to drink, and she was out there in garbage dumps, sucking alcohol out of rotten vegetables. So yeah, Med is nowhere close to quitting, and Scott can't believe how bad her addiction is. Later, Med brings tea and sweets for him and tells him about how big of drinkers people of her race are. Ogres start drinking when they're 10, but Mio's habits were worse, so her family decided to send her to the church as a priestess. Med tells Scott that she wants to quit drinking herself, but it is hard for her. She also has self-esteem issues because a human that she liked turned her down because she reeked of alcohol. Scott tries to make her feel better by complimenting her cookies, but Med takes it too seriously. She puts her tea away and starts forcing her lips on Scott's. It turns out that the tea she served was milk alcohol, and Scott was drunk. Med failed to quit again. Calm confronts her for drunk kissing people and tells her to avoid it, but Med fears nothing and would love to make mistakes. On the other hand, Scott has woken up, and the only thing he remembers is Med forcing herself on him. Later, a woman with horns and elf ears steps into the church for its preservation. Calm has a very vulgar past. She used to be a model sister at a church, but one day she chose to lose her virginity to some repairmen who had come to fix the place. The woman with horns and elf ears was Calm, and she had created some rules to keep the touch-deprived people of the church in order. Scott favors Calm's idea, which turns her on, and her succubus side is coming out. It is prohibited for women to come in physical contact with men, but Med tries to break the rule. Calm stops her, and Med pinches her breasts in annoyance, even though, according to the rules, she can't touch female parts anymore. That pinch does things to Calm. Anyways, no one is allowed to expose any skin, but Med tries her best to hang her balls out. She also tries to persuade Calm to let her chest be free. Calm has restricted everyone from saying nasty things, which makes Scott wonder why she's against them, considering she's a succubus and lives off energy. Med tells him that she's a vegan in that sense, but it seems she's close to breaking her fast. Blumera barges in suddenly. Panicked, she reveals that Calm is in succubus mode and has reached her limit. Scott didn't understand, so Med explained to him that as a succubus, Calm needs intimacy, or she'll start emitting pheromones to arouse others. This phenomenon might affect the nearby village too, and they need to do something about it. Feeding Calm male milk is the only way to save her, so Med and Blumera start whispering sweetness into Scott's ears to make him wet. Milking the white out of him didn't take too long, and Scott was ashamed of himself. Then, the Spurt Lady appears to drown him in further embarrassment. The Spurt Lady sells cow milk to Calm regularly because Calm dislikes human fluid and can't have it. Med and Blumera knew the truth, and they were fooling Scott. Calm was also ashamed of being a needy succubus. Scott comes to feed her cow milk and mentions how weak she looks. Calm had run out of fluids, but Scott had bought more for her and mixed his blood in the milk to make it consumable for her. His blood really helped with the taste, and Calm was in love with his blood, to the point where she was ready to taste Scott's milk too. After all this frustrating mess, the sisters recognize that they've fallen for the same man who's busy screaming into the void. On the 7th day of worship, Scott was getting ready for the prayers when 3 goblins knocked on the door to partake in the worship. Goblins are a monstrous race that can understand human speech to some extent and have been involved in assaulting human females. Scott couldn't believe what he was hearing. The goblins wanted to pray and learn more about Takafumiism because they were very inspired by the hero. They also start thanking Scott for bringing peace to the forest. The priest didn't understand, so the goblins told him that the sisters used to abuse them mercilessly, but since his arrival, things have settled down. As they're trying to talk, the sisters appear from the back and grab their heads to proceed with the inhumane beating. Scott tries to calm them down, but Blumera refuses, saying how cruelly these monsters assault women. Calm had witnessed the humiliation herself in her succubus days. Blumera wants Scott to protect them from the goblins, but the priest believes that goblins are the ones who need saving from the sisters. While receiving beatings from Med and Calm, the goblins try to explain to the priest that all the attacks they've landed on the sisters were out of revenge. The goblins mention all the emotional trauma they had to go through at the hands of the sisters. One of the goblins starts crying and says they should get along because that's what the god and Takafumi want. Listening to this little monster makes Scott tear up, and he recalls all the pain he went through in the village. Blumera comforts him, and Scott holds his hand out to the goblins to welcome them warmly to Takafumiism. The sisters tell the monsters to wash up because they stink. After they shower, they all sit down to talk, and the goblins try to clear the misconceptions about their race. According to them, goblins love families, and making kids brings them joy, but some female goblins can't make babies, so they abduct human females to use their wombs for more babies. The goblins start acting very creepy, and their mouths start watering talking about this topic, so the sisters decide to tie them to tall wooden stands, and Scott supports them in the matter. Med is allowed to drink however much she wants, because she'll be filling the goblins' stomachs with her vomit if they don't repent their sins. The goblins will be allowed to befriend humans only if they compete. Blumera gets ready to submit a subjugation to the guild. The news of goblins joining the church spreads in the village, and it infuriates the villagers. They decide to burn the church and punish the believers who are letting the monsters loose.